The large cap indexes remain in record territory despite a recent pause, and all three major indexes, including the Dow, are on track to end the month of May in the green. So joining us now to talk more about the investing landscape heading into summer is Scott Sheridan, CEO of the trading platform tastytrade. Scott, it's great to have you on, especially as we are about to close out the month of May. Tomorrow, Friday, the official last trading day for May. And there is that old adage on Wall Street, sell in May and go away. Do you think that is true this year?
I haven't heard that in a long time. That was a big one on the floor when I traded down on the floor of the CBOE a long time ago. Do I believe that? I think we are ripe for a pullback. I'm not going to say that it is just a simple sell in May and go away because I think it depends on what sector you're looking at. I see from my perspective, there's a lot of reasons to be concerned. And when I say concerned, I'm not talking about an implosion. I'm not talking about a crash, but a 10%, 15% pullback, which to me would be healthy. With the stocks that I'm looking at clearly that everybody's looking at, and the one for me that's going to lead the way is NVIDIA. So NVIDIA, super impressive, but 140% this year. I think it's probably a little overdone. So what I was surprised with was on their earnings where they said they were splitting the stock 10 for 1. I thought they were going to wait on that one. For me, that would have been a good one to keep in the back pocket so that on a quarter when they missed, they'd say we missed, but we're splitting the stock, make it more approachable. I get people can trade fractionals now, which is great. So you don't have to just go spend $1,150 on a share of stock. But to me, that stock and others in the AI space are priced for perfection, not minimizing the upside potential of AI. I just haven't seen it enough to believe that the valuations are accurate right now.
You talked about some sectors where you do sense weakness. What are they?
Well, for me, the big one is the tech sector. And that's an area that I would be extremely worried about. Again, you look at some of these moves, and there's nervousness in some of these stocks when all of a sudden you take like an SMCI, and that stock can move $100, $200 in a day. That to me is almost like crypto land, where you're crypto moving 5-10% in a day. We haven't seen those moves recently, but we've seen some big ones in the past. We have seen those. So are there value? Is there value in the technology? Of course. Is AI going to change our lives in ways that it is being promoted right now? I'm not a believer of that. I do think that it's going to have a place. But for me, the tech sector has been given a valuation that it's alarming.
Interesting.
So there's other areas that I would focus on. And another one for me that I think the market's waiting on and looking for would be the interest rates and what the Fed is going to do. I have been a naysayer on rate cuts for the last 6 months. People, a lot of the quote unquote experts have been saying, oh, there's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're down to, I think, 2. And my feeling is there's probably an even chance that we have a rate increase rather than before we have a rate reduction. What I think a lot of people seem to forget, short-term memory, is that 5%, Fed funds at 5%, that was a given. That was your number. So we had, again, my opinion, artificially low rates for 15 years, basically zero. When I say low, can't get much lower. And again, people like that. I get it. It's nice to have rates wrapped around zero, but it's not real. I think the Fed kicked the can down the road, and now we're going to see what happens as that unrolls.
Scott, I do want to get your take, though, because the GDP report that we got earlier today did miss expectations. It did show that inflation is easing, and in the past few weeks, we have seen more and more evidence that the consumer is pulling back and growth is starting to slow. So yes, even though we had an unprecedented rate cycle the past 4 years, the data does seem to be indicating that the Fed might need to pull back. What do you think?
So, yes, but I'm hesitating because if you go back and you roll tape, I don't care whose tape you roll from 2 years ago, a recession was a guarantee, right? Everybody said we have to have a recession, and we did. Well, so far, it doesn't look like we have. So I'm not saying that rates aren't going to come down in time. I just think that what's happening, what the Fed is doing, it's working. I don't think it's working as quickly as they had hoped. You look at savings rates, you look at credit card balances, you look at what people are spending right now, and it's almost as if people are like, I don't care. It's YOLO. Let's just go do it because we've just come through the pandemic. I don't care. I'm making money. I want to go out. I want to enjoy my life. Somebody's going to have to pay for that at some point in time. There is going to be a pullback in the market. I do think we will see rates in time pull back a little bit. But when I say a pullback, I'm thinking we might have a 4 to 6% range, whereas I think you have a lot of people saying they want to see or think rates are going back to 2 or 3%. And in my lifetime, I don't think we'll see that again.
I'm still stuck on you're floating the potential of a rate hike. What do you think could lead to that? What will be the impact on the markets, and in particular on a looming disaster in commercial real estate?
Well, my family was in real estate, and so I'm aware of what that looks like. I wouldn't want to own shopping centers right now. I wouldn't want to own strip malls. I wouldn't want to own a big mall. So, in Chicago, you can see what they're doing downtown. They're trying to convert some office space, into residential. And that could be a good change. I'm not an architect, so I can't say structurally what that work is, if it's even feasible. I'm sure some buildings will be easier than others. But I think if the Fed's not getting the numbers that they're hoping for, and if there is a surprise uptick, which I think that there could be, because you go to the grocery store, you go anywhere, it doesn't make a difference where you go, everything costs more. And I just was reading something that was really interesting, talking about how home insurance is not factored into the inflation numbers. And what we are seeing, totally different topic, but coming back to the same one. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing right now with global warming, and we're seeing the disasters that are happening, the 100-year storms or 1,000-year storms that are happening, weekly, monthly, yearly. What's happening now is insurance companies are backing away from certain regions. I get it. Why are you going to pay? How can you go in and pay out $1.50 and you're taking in $1? It's not sustainable. What does that mean? Well, if people can't get home insurance, or if it's just exorbitant, that means they're not going to be able to afford a home because you can't get a mortgage without having insurance. What's that going to do to home prices?
I agree.
So,
we've seen it. The home
right.
insurance costs are dramatic, right? And that certainly fits into the services sector, the housing sector, whether it's owning a home, renting a home, renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance. It's definitely all through the roof.
But it's not sorry, but it's not factored into it to inflation, to the cost. But that's a real number.
I do think in the sense of what it might mean for other purchases, we could see it, right? Maybe that's why we see softness elsewhere, because people are having to pay more for that, and that means less money left over for some discretionary items. For instance, as we saw in Best Buy's earnings earlier today. But as someone who runs a trading platform, Scott, you had hit on this a little bit earlier, and certainly I think we've seen it on display this quarter during the reporting season, is that even though the stock market broadly has melted higher in the month of May, there are winners and losers, even among the large caps within each particular industry. So I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit more about that, if that is something that you are seeing holistically beyond just an NVIDIA and a TSMC, for instance, on your platform.
So it's interesting. Our customers tend to be much more active than the industry average. Our customers tend to be, because we are derivatives, primarily a derivatives platform. Clearly, we trade everything: stocks, options, futures, crypto. But our customers are extremely active in the derivative space. And what we see is that in markets like this, and again, it's funny to say like this because we're a half a step away from all-time highs, but there has been a little bit of pullback. And if you look at the OCC, the Options Clearing Corp, their volumes that the OCC have been pretty anemic for the last week and a half, 2 weeks. They're wrapped around 40 million. Upper 30s, when we have had, many periods where in the mid to upper 50s, 50 million contracts a day. Our customers are still active because when you're trading and you are non-directional, or you're trying to collect premium, you're a seller of options, you're looking for a move like this. The straight up move like this isn't good unless you're just a buy and hold, or you are a trend trader, where a lot of other customers tend to be that way. You'll see them pull back if they're not getting that bull trend that they're looking for. So we're still seeing tons of activity. Again, the big stocks are always going to be the most active: Tesla, Apple, Meta, Amazon. Those are all the big ones. But for us right now, no question about it, our biggest is NVIDIA. And, we got Dell earnings today. That's been active for us. Chewy was another one that's been active for us. I happen to have 2 dogs. I love Chewy. I think an amazing company. I don't own it, so I can't say whether or not it's priced correctly, but I think their service is great, and I'm a customer service guy, so I love that.
Their customer service is truly unrivaled. Lastly, I want to ask you about an interesting report from the Wall Street Journal that President Trump, former President Trump, considering Elon Musk for an informal position in his second Trump administration. If you're a Tesla investor, what do you make of that?
Elon Trump is a brilliant guy. I think I don't agree with him on a lot of his comments. I think he's spreading himself awfully thin. I think this is a really risky and dicey moment for Tesla shareholders when he's basically, not basically, he is threatening them, give me 52, 58 billion. Otherwise, I'm taking my ball and my toys and I'm going home. That's alarming. Now, what I find to be funny is that Trump just came out and made a comment saying that he was going to basically kill the EV market, at least coming in from overseas. That can't be a bullish statement for Elon Musk. So, it'll be interesting if Elon Musk wants to do it. Apparently, he's able to do more in 24 hours than anybody else that I know. So maybe he could add that to his repertoire. I think if that's the case, now you have some questions about Twitter or about X, and you say, if he is in the Trump administration, is there a conflict of interest there with that fact that he owns, one of the largest social media platforms? And what does that look like? Now, a totally different topic, but also talking about potential conflict. What I'm fascinated by right now, there's a trial going on, and I'm not talking about the one in New York, but there's a trial with the DOJ going up against Live Nation and Ticketmaster. And I think everybody's fascinated by that because I don't think you can walk down the street and ask somebody and say, listen, what do you think about the charges that go on? Because your ticket is $150 and then your fees, whatever those are $75 or $80. It's insane. Now, what I'm fascinated by is their argument to say why they think they should be able to do it. And I'm an entrepreneur, and I think that one of the great things about our country is if you have an idea and you follow the rules, go ahead, have at it. But this is a deal that the government approved with some qualifications. Now, the question is, for me, is the government going to be able to prove their case and say that Live Nation didn't do what they said they were supposed to do? And I think it's really hinging right now on a Kanye West Drake concert that was a fundraiser where they didn't allow, I think, 100 people in who had bought tickets on StubHub because they said, unless you're going through Ticketmaster, your ticket's not valid. Personally, I think that Live Nation is going to lose. It's going to be interesting to see what happens if this gets broken up, but it's going to be great for consumers because now you're going to have real competition and you're going to get to really truly see what the price of a ticket should be.
Are you that confident that it'll increase competition and lower prices if they're broken up?
Yes, absolutely. There's no question because there are products out there that are ready to compete. But the problem is if you're threatened by the 10,000-pound gorilla, what do? You can't do it. They can bury you. So you say it's not worth fighting. It's not worth whatever we have to battle. And most smaller firms don't have the deep pockets to go into a court case. So not that I'm a big fan of the DOJ stepping in and filing lawsuits, but in this case, listen, they just had one with Google. And I think the case is over. I don't think it's been decided. I don't know if there's been a decision that's been made in that. Question whether they have a monopoly. I mean, personally, I think Amazon is going to be next up. How can little companies compete with Amazon? And, everybody loves getting their product in hours or days, versus days or weeks. But at some point, what damage is this doing to local economies when you have little stores that just can't stay open? Your neighborhood stores can't compete with Amazon. So we have created some behemoths. And I think now we need to figure out, is this the direction that we think is best for the country? Or do we need to modify and say, we got to break some up? I don't know if you guys are old enough, but the baby bells. You look at bells, you look at Exxon, you look at Standard Oil. So this isn't new. I mean, this has happened time and time again. What concerns me is that the DOJ, is picking up a case that the government approved.
Yeah.
So it was approved. So my question is, maybe we should be putting a little more effort and scrutiny into these deals and saying, is this really best for the country? Because to go back and fix a mess is way harder than just to prevent it in the first place.
Scott, good to get your take. Thank you for joining us from Chicago. Scott Sheridan, CEO of Tasty Trade.